Waiting for the stream to start. I'm just seeing all the lights flash on the audio, so that sounds good. I think. And yes. Good morning, hello coders. Welcome to Tuesday. It's Tuesday at 7:30 British summertime, and what a lovely summer we're having. Finally it's getting hot, which is nice. I am in a t-shirt after all. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on the connection between the PHP container and the MySQL container. We're going to connect them two together. Now, they are Docker containers, and there are a couple of ways we can do this. One way, which I've taught before, is how you can use links to link the containers together. But we're going to try and do something using networks. So we're going to use the user-defined network to network them together. So we need to create a Docker network, and then we need to assign those containers to that network. Then eventually, what I would like to do, the goal, if you will, is to get a test suite running in Codeception to test that the PHP container can talk to the Docker container. And last week we sort of wrapped up, if you will, the SQL schema section of this this course. I'll talk more about in just a second. And the schema included a couple of tables, one being the status table that has 3 rows within that table. So what we could do is we could run a test to count the number of rows within that table, and that will check obviously that the connection is established. We can actually call that table and we can query that table too. Okay, so just bear with me just a second. I just need to finish setting something up, which I think... Let me just bear with me just a second, otherwise this is going to be problematic down the road. That'll do. Okay, update. Right, I was just, updating the stream. I noticed that there was a couple of tags that I missed. So, this, if I go to the browser, this is the Codeception documentation for the database, how to access a database. It's a wee bit small on the screen, so I do apologize. So we're going to connect through PDO. We supply the DSN and the credentials and so forth. You can also dump SQL out if you want. You can do a populate and a cleanup, a reconnection, and all that jazz. That is where we want to end up, and we want to be running things like IC in database. I think there is also another assertion. Here we go. I am connected to database. So that's where I would like to be. I would like to have a test that gives me confidence that the database is connected to this. First of all, though, there's a couple of hurdles that we have to jump through. One being that if I go back to the code here, first of all, I need to just double check that the right components or the packages are installed in the Docker file. So if we open that up, we have, what have we got here? We've got MySQL PDO. Okay, so that we have that. Do we need anything else? I don't think so at this stage, so I think we're okay. We may need to have other bits and pieces. I was debating with myself whether or not to use MySQL I over PDO MySQL. We have that as well. I think for this, I'm going to use PDO just because it works nicer with Codeception. Plus, there's obviously other benefits of PDOs, of the PDO, that I think I will utilize in this. I did say beforehand that we weren't going to use any libraries, but I didn't say that we weren't going to use any extensions. So, whether or not you class PDO MySQL as a library, I don't. I think it's an extension personally. But let's not have that purist debate. So what I need to do is in the DockerCompose file, I need to create a network, don't I? That's what I need to do. Excuse me. And I need to put this in here. I need to define the network, and then in each of these services I need to associate the container to that network. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do I usually do this at the bottom. It doesn't really matter where you do it, either at the top or the bottom. Let's just do it at the top to keep things nice. I do networks, and then you define your own network. So the network, we're going to just randomly call it a, let's do PHP_course, like so. Oops, come on. There we go. Okay, so we've created our own network, and I can move that out like that. And then we need to associate these two. What I've just realized, of course, is I haven't actually given myself a GitHub task for this, issue for this, which is naughty of me. I must do that. I must keep getting into the habit of doing that. So I'm just going to go back to the browser here. This is the FreeCodeCamp PHP OOP repo that we're in. Apologies for jumping back and forth here. For those that don't know, I'm creating this course. It's a course that I'm creating for FreeCodeCamp, hence the name of the repository. And this is going to teach object-oriented PHP. And we're going to build an invoice application. And these streams are me demonstrating the build process, the development process of the course. It's not actually the course itself. Once the invoice application has been built, we can then go off and I can then go off and actually record, not in a live way, in a very edited way, a very clean way, the course for FreeCodeCamp. So this is kind of like the build up to that. Obviously, I need an application for me to teach object-oriented PHP if I wanted to have some sort of invoicing thing. So that's what we're doing here. So I'm just going to go to ifshoes, and then I'm going to create myself one. I'll talk about Tailwind in just a second because I have been playing with that. I was playing with that a lot over the weekend. So let's go to here and just type in connect containers to a Docker network. Okay, let's just submit that, just so we've got some history really. So labels, can I add a label to these things? Yes, Docker. I want enhancement. I guess it's MySQL as well. That's good. I'm going to assign it to myself. And that's all good. It's issue 24. So if we go back to the code, I need to eval that. Sorry, eval. What happened was the Docker machine was taking too long to build, so I went down and made myself a cup of tea, and I've forgotten to do that. So I need to do Docker compose. No, that's fine. We'll leave it like that. That's no problem. But I do need to do git status, and I do need to do git checkout -b. And we're on issue 24, Docker network. So if we do git status again, git branch. There we go. So we're on this one. We're on the 24 network branch. Fine. Okay, which means that I can start playing around with these files without damaging the master branch, which is the whole point of doing all of this Git stuff. So we've created our network. We can have as many networks as we want. This is an array of networks. So we have PHP course. That's fine. And then underneath, within the containers here, I need to do networks, and this is an array of networks that the container is attached to. So my PHP Storm has discovered that we have a network called PHP Course, which is up here. So we connect to that, and then underneath here we can on the container for the DB for the database, we can do the same. So both of these now are within the PHP Course network. Literally 3 or 4 lines of code has done that. So we've created our own network called PHP Course. And I do go into other alternative ways of linking containers together in the Docker in Motion course that I did for Manning Publication, and a whole bunch of other things for, I mean, it's a 6-hour, 5 and a bit hour course, that Docker in Motion course. So that goes through all the fundamentals of Docker, but a part of that is also linking the containers together, because we actually created a PHP, MySQL project with that. But anyway, going off topic here. So we created this network called PHP Course. We have these services. We have two services, web and we have DB. Both of these have a network networks property, where we could supply multiple networks to connect to. We only have the one, which is PHP Course. Of course, we can do all sorts of other things in the networks if we want to actually define more granular control of the network itself. We aren't going to worry about that too much today. Okay, so let's just run off of this. Let's just come off, bring that up a little bit, make a little bit of room. Let's just clear this down. So we're going to bring up these containers again. So I'm going to bring them down first. So we're going to do DockerCompose hyphen just down. That'll do. That should drop them down. Excellent. So we have, whoops, if you can see, we have a warning here: network FreeCodeCamp PHP course not found. That's because there wasn't a network to begin with, and we've tried to do it down when we have differences in our composer file. So that's the warning there. So don't worry about that too much. Notice as well that we have this prefix here. Right, so the network we actually defined was this, PHP course. But actually we've got a prefix. What is this prefix? Well, the prefix is the same prefix that is on each one of these containers. Can you see that? So the service was web and the service was DB, but we've actually got this prefix. Same with the network, we have that prefix. The reason being is that DockerCompose uses the project, the project name, which is the directory above, the parent directory, that name, as the prefix, because of course you could have multiple ones of these floating about. So this is a way of sort of like, I don't want to use the word namespacing, but it's a way of sort of like differentiating the different types of Docker environments that you might have. When I'm at clients and stuff and working on my laptop, this isn't the laptop here obviously, but when I am doing that, I might have like 6 or 7 things on the go, like literally Docker environments on the go, doing various different things. So you need a way of sort of having this prefix here. But anyway, let's just run a Docker compose up -d. Okay, so the first thing it's going to do is it's going to see, okay, we need a network now. So we're going to create that network with the default driver, and it's default because we haven't configured it to use anything else. And then we create that, and then we create this. So we've actually created the containers and the network at the same time by just running that single file. And if I did a docker inspect, and I believe I need to put in the, I don't think I can actually put in the, can I do it through, they may have changed it, hang on, DockerCompose -help. Is there an inspect? I don't think there is. Nope. There's a config version help. Nope. That's what we're on. Okay, but there is, if I did a docker ps-a, got the container name of, say, this one, for instance. And we copy that. If I did a docker inspect of that. So docker inspect, again, this is something that I talk about a lot in the Docker in Motion course. We can see a whole JSON data structure here for the particular container that we're running against, which is the web container here. We can see that this is the image. We can see that the volumes that we've assigned. But what I want to find is the network. So we're going to scroll up. We can see all of these environment variables too. You can see the mount points, all sorts of stuff. Come on, let's go up. I should be, I mean, normally what I would do is grep this out so I can just bring out a portion of this. So we have the state, it's running, network mode. Okay, here we go. So this is the network that we've created, the PHP course. So that shows that that is associated. There is this links thing here, which is null because we don't have anything linked up yet, which is the other way of doing it. But this inspect tool is or data structure is extremely useful because you can have a look and actually see how the Docker container is configured, which is brilliant, awesome. Yeah, so we've also got the native network status here. We're running off of a bridged network, and here, this is what I wanted to show you. This is an array of networks. So the first network is the PHP course that we've just created, and notice here that we have a whole load of configuration that we can deal with, the gateways and all this stuff, which you can configure in the config. But of course, we've just used the default driver, which is fine, default config, and we can see that we have an alias here, which is web. So that means that the Docker, the database container should be able to alias to this container, the web container. So we should be able to do that. And likewise, if I did this to the DB container, so DB, there we go. We should see that is also connected to there, and we have an alias of DB like so. But you can actually access these. They actually give away the IP addresses for each of these containers and so forth, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so that's cool. So both of these containers are now wired up and they're running and they're all good. I just want to check something a minute. I just want to double check. I want to go to Docker Compose. We're going to dive into exec. We're going to dive into the web bash container. The web container in bash. I just want to see, do I have MySQL? I do have a MySQL there. I just want to check the version of that. MySQL bash command isn't found. Ugh. Is that just because we have MySQL like that? Okay, so we might have a problem that MySQL isn't actually installed on here. If I did where is MySQL, that might be problematic. Excuse me. Okay, so that could cause some issues. That could cause some issues. I'm just going to close this down. We do have in here in the Docker file. If I scroll down, come on, this way. Bring that out. Come on, bring that out. Come on, PHP Storm. Work with me here. Okay, if we go into the Docker file, which is this bad boy, we do have MySQL. We might have to have some other extensions and so forth to this to allow for that to be connected. We do have PDO, so what I might do is I might attempt to just run the that Codeception test. Regardless of whether that works or not, that'll become our failing test anyway, which is good. We have connected these containers together, so that kind of finishes that task at least. But let's see if there's an easy way of getting this database test running. I'm going to go back to the browser and I'm just going to have a little peruse of this just to see what I need to configure. What have we got? We've got the way to configure the examples, DB, DNS, modules enabled. Okay, so we do need to update the config of Codeception a little bit to put all this stuff in. No problem. Okay, let's do that now. Let's go back to the code. the question is, do I do this in the... it's certainly not a unit test, okay? It's because it's more of an acceptance test. It's actually more of a functional test, to be honest, because you're checking the functionality of it, I think. It's certainly not a unit test because you're having to test the... Well, it's also an integration test, one could argue, because you're testing the integration of both the database and PHP. So, whoops, database. Okay, so we're going to just wire up this this Codeception thing, which is in that file here, which is codeception.yaml. We could define it per test. Maybe we need to do that. I forget how because I normally do this through Doctrine. It's kind of all done for me. So let's wire up a functional test. Let's get that running. So let's do enabled here, add framework module here. Helper is functional. The first thing we need to do is define the DB like that, and then that itself has options. One being the DSN. I'm just going to copy and paste what we've got in the documentation here. So bring that back out to about there. Okay, so at this point we've got the MySQL host. It's not localhost; it's actually called DB, because that is the name of the alias that we've aliased that container to, or that container name. Then we have the database name itself, and that I believe is in the environment variables. The env dist here is the root password. The root database is invoice app for this on my local machine, so we can wire that up too. So that becomes like that. Username is root, password is test for this example. Again, this is local. This isn't going to be production or anything like that, so don't worry too much about all of that jazz. What else do we need? We need to have reconnect is true, I believe. We don't need to worry about, I'm just going through here, the browser here, I'm just having a look down. We don't need to worry about multiple dumpings. We don't need to worry about multiple databases. We don't need to worry about how to populate the database yet. We might be working, I mean, it's already populated, but we might think about doing this, splitting this out later. Again, I'll go away and think about that. And then it goes on and actually talks about the tests themselves. So, excuse me, I'm going to create myself a test. And I'm starting to think now it needs to maybe go in, instead of functional, it needs to go into acceptance rather than functional. Perhaps. I don't know. Okay, let's just keep on. Let's just plow on and see. This is a bit sort of like trial and error. So I do apologize. Let's go into the container, which I believe is that one here. We need to do a bin. Is it a bin or is it vendor bin? I forget. Vendor bin. Codecep. I can't remember what the things are called. I think it's generate. Or I'm going to have to do Codecep list, aren't I? Not help. I think it's generate test. Here we go. Awesome. And what have I been doing previously? These are tests, not sests. Fair enough. Okay. Cool. So let's do generate test, and let's do let's do functional. I think that's right. And then let's do DB, and hopefully, yeah, functional database test. Awesome. Scroll, up. We should now have our DB test in here. Wonderful. Way. That was a bit sort of hit and miss. So we're going to do test connection. Excuse me. I can't spell to save my life. There we go. Test connection. We have the tester, so we can do this tester. Can I? No. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it isn't this at all. Maybe I've configured this completely wrong. I wasn't even showing you the code, so I do apologize. It's going to be one of those mornings, isn't it? How do you get to that? You do I am going to I comment. Do I have to pass in I up here? But that's the helper, isn't it? I haven't had enough caffeine this morning. We pass in the functional helper, like so. I'm just going to have a look at one of my tests up here. Invoices new, this. Try this. Try this. Try this. This. Whoops. What have we got? No, that doesn't have it either. Maybe we do need to run a cest. Possibly. Maybe I'm doing this all wrong. Maybe, whoops, maybe this is all wrong. Let me just check something a mo. It's almost like my PHP Codeception isn't wired up properly, which is frustrating. Because I don't have access to those shenanigans. Like I said, I usually just drop in Doctrine and it's all good fun, because the Doctrine part of it, the module deals with all this stuff nicely, and I work within Symfony quite a bit. So this is gonna be tricky. Maybe I'm thinking it is assessed. Assessed. Maybe it is assessed. Assessed being, it is assessed, isn't it? Thinking about it, because assessed is more. It's not a test. It's a unit test is a test because that's a unit of work that you're testing upon. Assessed in this instance is, you know, a series of behaviors, and that's what we're checking, the series of behaviors rather than that. So I think what I'm going to do in that frame of mind is I'm going to remove the test. Bye-bye. Where are you? Where's the delete button? And I'm going to generate assessed rather than a test. And you know what? I'm going to do it in acceptance. I'm not going to do it in functional. Partly because I've just seen a load of examples of it in in acceptance, but also partly because it's more of an acceptance test rather than anything else, I think, because you're testing the acceptance of whether it's connected, that is, and if it is connected, then it's acceptable. So if I did an I here, we should be able to get all sorts of, I don't know if you can see it on the PHP Storm output. I don't think you can because it's a pop-up, but there was a whole list of things that I could do. Now, obviously, what I need to do is I need to grab this stuff and bung it into my acceptance suite. Bring that back out too. Okay. And then in where am I? DB assessed here. Yeah, we can then apply bits and pieces to that. Whoops. Okay. Whoops. So that button. There we go. So there's like, I see in current field, I see in link, and so forth. And then sort of I can see page not found. I can see response code, all of that shiny jazz that you get when you're running behavioral tests in SESTs. It's not the same when you do tests. That's the difference. But there is another check. It's called C in database or is connected. Am connected to database. They are the things that I'm trying to get here. It's probably something to do with caching. I probably haven't configured it correctly. It doesn't. There isn't anything in the documentation to say that that needs to be cleared, which is a shame. yeah. The module provides the C in database. So you can do C in database. It's the module that provides that. So really what's happening is that it's not configured correctly. That's the problem, I think. So there's a bunch of things. If I go down here on the browser, there's a bunch of things that are required. The DSN, the user, the password, the path. You don't need to have the populate and clean up and all this stuff. That's fine. And you configure it in the modules. So you have modules and then enabled, and then you put all this down. And then you can deal with multiple dumps and stuff. Multiple databases and other bits and pieces, and you've got a way of populating the database if you want to. I don't even think this is going to work because we don't actually have the MySQL binary anyway, so I don't think it's going to work. But what I would have liked to have got is just a test that told me that it didn't work, right? Because then that's something that I can reproduce. And then when it does work, I can then run that test again, and hopefully that would pass. But there's nothing here, unfortunately, that tells me that I need to do some other bits and pieces in order to get the configuration to run, which is a shame, because it goes straight down to this section here, which is query generation. So either I haven't wired this up correctly. If I go to here, either I haven't actually wired this up. Because I don't have that option, that C in database stuff. If I go back to the acceptance suite, we have modules enabled DB. Is it lowercase? Yeah, it is lowercase b. And then we have the DSN, which is MySQL. The host is DB, because that's the host. That's the name of the web server that we've got in the network. Then we have the DB, and then that is the name. We have the username, the password, and I've just put in reconnect equals true there. So that to me looks okay. So I'm wondering why it isn't. Maybe I need to, there's a couple of things. Maybe I need to restart Apache. Maybe I need to do something with the caching. I'm not sure. I'm just going to remove that anyway, because that's broken. Let's just do a quick down and up and see. So I'm going to come out of this. Let's do an exit. Well, yeah, let's do an exit. Let's do a down. To bring them down. This is a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut type thing, but I'm a little bit confused as to why I don't have access to those kind of that level of configuration. So let's go back into here, and then let's take another look. To be honest, this is more of a problem with PHP Storm not running that. I wonder what would happen if I just put that code in, to be honest, and just see. So yeah, let's try that, because I can always run this test and see what the output of the error is of the test itself. So we're going to scroll down to, where is it? Here. So we can see IC in database, but I just want to do I am connected to database. So we're going to put that in like so. If I go back to the code. So notice it's gone yellow here. This is what I was confused about. It's not actually in the acceptance tester part here, which is frustrating. So yeah. So this is invoice app. That's what it should be. I'm going to give this a group like I've done always. So this is at group. We're going to give this the group name of DB hyphen, DB, that's good. There's going to be more than one group because there'll be more than one test. So this is DB connect. So this is this is connect test, connected test. So that will throw an error if it's not connected. However, it's not in the acceptance test thing, so I don't actually think this is going to work, but I'm hoping this is actually going to give some output. So if I did vendor and then bin and then codecep and then run acceptance -g, passing that in, group. Oh yeah, I didn't actually put the group in, which is db-connect. Run this. What's going on? Sweet acceptance could not be found. Oh, it's because I can't spell acceptance, that's why. Okay, so we have an error here. The error is that no database invoice app in key databases. And then DB module is not configured. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. I was kind of... I wonder if I need to take this configuration out of the acceptance test and put it into the root level codeception. I wonder. And then I wonder if I then need to reference it. I wonder. Let's have a look. Let's go back to the browser a minute and just have a... Maybe I've missed something up here. Scroll to the top. Let's get to the right top. Okay, so we have blah, 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 blah. Then it's in config. It doesn't say which config this is, whether it's Codeception or whether it is a config within the suite. Let's do some trial and error. Let's go back to the code. Let's grab all of this. I would imagine it would be in the Codeception level, because you could have many suites that have access to the database. So that to me makes more sense. So we have paths, extensions, coverage. Let's see if I need to bring that in here. It has the modules enabled bit. And then in the acceptance suite, do we not reference that as an enabled module? Like that. Let's see. Run that again. Nope. See, at least I've now got a test here that that is actually throwing me errors. I'm not just clicking about and hoping for the best. So DB module is not configured. No database invoice in the key databases. So DB module is not configured. So for some reason it's not talking back to this. Whoops. Ba, 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 ba. Interesting. I just want to show you this. This is what I'm reading here. Someone here has got a similar error to me. DB module is not configured, and then something about other options. This is kind of what I wanted to have more of an idea of what the error was. But it's good to see this because you get to see how they've configured it. This is in their Codeception thing. They have modules enabled DB and then the configure of DB and so forth. Putting in their passwords and their roots and all this stuff, although it is localhost, so that's fine. And then other bits and pieces that they've got. Then they have the suite and they've enabled it. So it's much like what I've just gone and done. And they have that error. They have more of an error than I do, which is nice. But then the answers here is to say that what do they've got? They've got put the config section back. DB module is not configured. Error appears when blah blah blah. Remove the enabled section from Codeception YAML. So to clarify, this is in my Codeception file. So you've got modules, then you've got the config, then you've got the data helper, DB, and so forth. So there's no enabled bit here. There's just, it goes straight into config. And then in the actual suite, you have modules, and then you have enabled, and then you have all of these things. And then you configure them, which is a totally different way. It's a totally different way to the documentation. So if this works, you know, okay, so which yeah, this is a confusion. Which config is it? The question is, why doesn't it work in the global config? Dear. So, okay, let's let's do some more fiddling. Let's go back to the code. So we're saying that we should remove the modules enabled part from here and just bung it all in like that. Was that the case? Let's go back and have a little look. That's what that chap's got. So he's got modules enabled database, and then he configures that database with the config. Like so. Right, I think this is correct. And then actually, no, that's not right, is it? You don't enable it within there. You just define the configuration of that. And then what you do in the acceptance suite is you say that then becomes enabled. I think that, well, it obviously doesn't work, but here we go. DB module is not configured. We do have some more info, which is options DNS user password are required. Didn't I just give that already to the Codeception in here? DNS, user, and password, they are all there. Very confused. I am very, very confused now. We've created two configurations: the Codeception configuration and the acceptance test configuration. Not very similar to the documentation configuration in the documentation, but it's giving me a different error. Okay. We've got data helper here, which is weird. What is data helper? Oh, okay. This person's got DCR static. Okay, that's two different things. I don't even know what that is. So so that's confusing. Okay, this here is a unit tester. He's connecting the database to the unit tester. So let's try that. He's also got enabled and config going on like that. So I think what I'll do is I will copy all of this stuff and I'll go back into the code and I will try my hardest to... I don't think that needs to be like that. I think that's fine, because that's okay. Let's just run that and just see whether that has passed. No, okay, I do need to have... It's all very fragile, this config. Okay, so I do need to have that. In the acceptance suite, I think I need to have enabled, and I also think I need to have config as well. So let's put in outside of that. Let's do config. Let's bring that in. So this is how another gentleman's done it on the Stack Overflow. So he's what they've done is they've enabled it and then they've configured it. But obviously you need to have DB. Oh, it's so much easier when you've got Doctrine. It's like, I'll just drop that in, and it's just going to use the same connection as what Symfony uses. No databases invoice in the key of databases. Does this mean, though, that we've tried to establish a connection? I was hoping for something a little bit more of a error, like can't connect to database, or MySQL is not installed, or something daft. This is exactly how this person has done it on Stack Overflow, and it's worked for them. I'm going to remove all of this. DB module is not configured. This is saying that it isn't configured. Wow. The point is to only have one config containing the database credentials. Yes, that is the point. That is the precise point. This person has put the details within here. But this is another layer of configuration, which is, again, very frustrating. This gentleman here, this person, is doing exactly the same as what I've just done, and is getting an error. Although he's put that in Codeception.yaml. It's all very frustrating. It's all very, very frustrating. I think what I'm going to do, because time is moving on and I need to get on and actually crack on with some other work, I've got a whole bunch of other bits and pieces which are not anything to do with this. Is I think I'm gonna take this offline. I'm going to bash my head over the wall for a bit over in the evenings tonight, and see if I can get this to fix. It's definitely a configuration issue. It's definitely configuration, but I don't think that I'm going to get it working within the next 4 minutes. To be honest, I don't really know what this is all about. To be honest, DCR static. I think this is a personal setup, a configuration where there's multiple configurations going on here, passing in the data helper. I don't even know what that is. That's enabled. Is that? Maybe I need to do that. And in your app suite, you enable data enabled, and then you do all of this stuff. That just looks like too much work for what I'm trying to achieve here. This person has put it in the config DB within the unit tester, which to me suggests that is the configuration of the unit test. Why you're testing databases in a unit test, I'm not sure, but this is the issue here. Let me just have a little quick gander. I'll time box this for a few minutes and see if I can actually push this on any further. Because I appreciate this is just a stream now of me struggling to get this to work, which is not good. Configuration is really tricky, especially when you're... First of all, let's check. I'm looking at the latest documentation. That's always a good thing to check. Oh, wow. Wow, I've just read something here. It says, I am connected to databases only useful when you have multiple database configurations. Since you have no such configurations, don't call I am connected to database. And then I changed to what you've suggested and it works fine. Maybe I'm just chasing my tail. Oh dear. All right, let's go back to the code. Instead of testing for that connection-wise, I thought I could just get away and do that. Let's run a test that tests whether or not there are things in the database. Let's just... So if we go back to the browser, we've got this one here, IC in database. You pass in the table, which is users, and then the fields, and that will run. So I could do IC in database status, and then the name of the status, and so forth. Let's just quickly have a look at that and see if that will run. I'm a little bit skeptical because I don't actually have that C in database call here, although that's now set up. That's interesting. You know what? I think I've just been chasing my tail for a long time. Let's do status. Ugh, dearie me. Status. Let's open that up. Let's go into name. Let's just double check what these fields are called. Go into where are we? I want MySQL. There we go. Data schema. It's status. It is name, and we have internal name. I can check those two. Okay, that's cool. Let's go back to here. Let's go into here. IC database name. That name is going to be, the first one is draft. And then the internal name, this is an array, so I could probably do it a little bit more easier on the eyes rather than have one huge, humongous string of stuff. So we have name, we have internal name. I'm not going to bother with the ID. I'm so frustrated with myself for just sort of like running up a wild goose chase. Name, draft, internal name, and this is going to be draft capitals. Okay, so this is configured now, but I'm not sure whether it's actually going to work because we don't have MySQL installed. I wasn't able to run that through the CLI. Perhaps there was a package missing, but we'll see. Let's run this. Dear. So I want to apologize to everybody who's watched and watching. I've now wasted about half an hour of your life. I do apologize. I was looking at completely the wrong documentation. It's not a problem with Codeception's documentation. It's a problem with my mind. I do apologize. So that's passed. So we'll change this to be from connected test. We'll change this to be status test. And status draft test, in fact. DB status draft. And we'll bring that out. Let's make it a little bit more presentable. I think what I'm going to do is, I think, well, what I would normally do, you see, is I would normally create a folder, a subfolder in here for different types of tests. I think what I'll do though is I will keep it as is, but I will rename it to be DB status test, like so. Wow. So that's changed. Excellent. So I should be able to run that. And what's that? What is that doing? Well, that is querying the database every time, and it's checking whether or not there is a row in the database called with the name of draft, a row in the status table called draft. I wonder if I could just do -- debug. Yeah, we can. Awesome. So this is exactly what it's doing here. So it's connecting to the DB. That was the first initial test that I was trying to achieve. Right. Okay. So this is how it connects. So this is the config that it's passing to here, and then it's connected to the excuse me, to the default invoice app, and then we can see and then we run IC in database status, where we have name draft, internal name is draft all in caps. The query that we run, we can actually see it here, is select count all from status, where name is question mark and internal name is question mark. Question marks will be populated through the values that we put in here. So these are the field names you see, which correspond to internal name and name. This is the status. This is the name of the table, which is that, and we can see that that has passed. There are more than one table that I can play with. If I came out of this container, well, actually, no, I don't need to do that. Do I? I can just demonstrate through the power that is the code. So I can open that up, and I can go into MySQL data status. So this is what we've checked. We've just done a check on that. So we can also check sent and overdue. So let's check those as well. So let's go back into the DB status, close that up. I'm going to copy this like so. Boom. Paste that in. This is going to be sent test. So its status, it is sent, and this is sent all in one lovely string. This is sent. This is, sorry, DB status sent, and this is status sent test. There is another test. Well, let's just quickly run those. So let's just do, what I'm going to do is just take off the groups and just go into group DB, because that should run all of these two. So that should run two tests now, which is, so we have the status and we have the draft and we have the sent. There is also another one that we want to just double check that it's in there. And that is overdue. Sorry, that's status. This is overdue. And this is overdue, like so. Overdue, overdue, overdue. And this is overdue. Excellent. Run that. That should be 3 tests now that we've created. And if I was to do -- debug like I did before, we should see an output of, whoa. I can't spell debug. We should see an output of all of the queries that were ran, which is super useful, because if you've got a problem with one of your database queries, like these are just very basic queries, right, that we are doing a count from, but you could configure this to actually run a query that you're running in your application, but through a test, and then you could check the outcome of things. So yeah, this is checking the draft status. This one here is checking the sent status. This one here is checking the overdue status, and they've all passed. They've all passed, and everything's hunky-dory. So now we are in a stage where we have the PHP container connected to the database container in this Docker lovely environment. And I'll just do a quick recap of how I did that in Docker, because the majority of this was stuck with the actual configuration of Codeception, which isn't really what I wanted to focus on today. The focus point was on this network that we've created. We have the networks PHP course, and then we are assigning this web service and this DB service to the PHP course network that we've just created, the user-defined network. So that is good. An extra 3 tests have been added today. I think we got there in the end. There was being a lot of bashing my head against the wall for the majority of this, but we got there in the end. And it's config. It usually is config and spelling mistakes that I fall apart on. And I was getting a little bit frustrated with the configuration that people had versus the configuration that was in the documentation. But I discovered that it wasn't the configuration at all. It was the fact that I was calling upon a method that I didn't need to, because I don't have multiple databases. So yeah, anyway, I'm pretty chuffed with this. Tomorrow we'll start actually building out PHP to run queries against this, against the database. We'll start first of all with the status, because that is the lightest one. So we'll run a query to pull out the status and so forth. We might not, and then we'll see how we go. So before I shoot off, and I do have to dive off very, very shortly, is that there are a couple of things that I would like to mention. If I go back to the browser, excuse me, if I go back into here we have issues. But one being that Oliver Davis was asking about use Tailwind. I was a little bit dubious about using Tailwind because I had never used Tailwind before. However, I've been using Tailwind quite a bit recently. I used that over the weekend a lot, because what I'm doing is I'm building a website for this whole course. So the website will have the main the video of the course that I will give off to FreeCodeCamp. That will be embedded in the website. But then there'll be subsequent sections or areas where it's listing all of these live streams. So if you want to see if you want to see these archived live streams again, you can go through that. And I'm using Tailwind to do that. I'm also using, and I must say, Tailwind has been very refreshing. It's a very different way of doing CSS. So I'm warming to it more. More investigation is needed, sure, but I'm warming to it. Basically, the reason why I'm a bit dubious is because I don't know enough about it. So if something was to go wrong with it and I needed to jump on, I would need to be aware of this. But I'm warming to it. I'm warming to Tailwind. I'm using Gatsby.js as well, which is another tool that I'm discovering in my learning journey. Gatsby.js is a lovely static site generator, and I've been playing around with GraphQL a fair bit too. Now this Gatsby Tailwind GraphQL website is going to be hosted by one of the sponsors of this live coding stream, and the sponsor is Hostinger. Hostinger is a great affordable, reliable hosting platform. They're sponsoring this live stream. And at the moment, there is a deal. If you go Hostinger/Peter Fisher, hostinger.com/Peter Fisher, you get 82% off your web hosting plus a free domain, which is bonkers. If you've got a project that you want to put together and you're looking for a reliable and affordable way of hosting that, do check out Hostinger. And of course, that gives me a little bit of a kickback too. So I thank you very much if you do that, because you're supporting the channel and you're supporting the progression of these courses and the channels that I'm doing, which is awesome. Also, if you put in the discount code of Peter Fisher, all one word, you get 15% off as well. So you first of all, you get 82% off by clicking that link. Then if you put in the discount code, you get a further 15% off. So that's hostinger.com/Peter Fisher. Thank you very much if you have used that link already, because it's supporting the channel. Like I said, I've used Hostinger before. They're good. That they're a good, reliable, affordable. I mean, you can't go wrong with that, right? That's such a decent discount. It's so good. So we're going to be using Hostinger to host this website that I'm building. So I'm building this up, and I did a lot of work on it over the weekend. It's if you're following me on Instagram and on Twitter at How to Code Well, you'll see previews of this. I've been doing little video snippets of how it is and how I've been trying to use Tailwind to make it responsive and so forth. So do follow me on that if you want to have a little preview. And then hopefully when we get to close to the point of actually deployment, I will demonstrate it on a live stream. And then after that, I will show you how we could actually deploy this to the Hostinger platform. So that's 82% off if you do hostinger.com/Peter Fisher. Also, we have the podcast. So this is a weekly Friday show that I do, where I interview fantastic guests talking about all things programming, web development, and it's been an amazing learning journey for me, because I'm learning loads by talking to these great people. So do check that out. That's howtocodewell.fm too. But I need to dash. I need to get on and actually do some work today for the freelance clients that I have. So thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everyone. And I'll see you again tomorrow at the same time, which is 07:30 British Summer Time. Cheers.